The sign was real. I didn't need to reread it. My eyes had taken it in the moment I stepped onto the porch. It was written in black permanent marker on yellow cardstock, taped to the center of the red front door like a warning label. Neat uppercase, letters, deliberate. Guests only, no drama, no disruptions, no single mothers. Not a word out of place, not a letter smudged, not a joke. I stood still, holding Harper against my chest, her tiny hand fisted around the collar of my coat. She stirred slightly, soft breath on my neck. She didn't know what that sign meant. Not yet. But I did. I am Evelyn Moore, 36, divorced, mother of one, former marketing director, now part-time freelancer with an infant sleep schedule, and a brutal insomnia routine. I have been many things in this house: daughter, disappointment, distraction. But today, apparently, I was something worse. I was uninvited. I hadn't come to beg, or explain, or even forgive. I came because Mia texted a week ago. "Come if you want. Mom said it's up to you." It sounded casual, almost lazy, but I knew her subtext. She wasn't asking me to come home, just offering me the smallest crack in a locked door. Now that door had a sign no one could accidentally write or forget to take down, a sign you printed in your mind long before you put pen to paper. Adjusted Harper's weight in my arms, keeping my face blank, breath even. The cold sliced into my skin, but I didn't flinch. I simply bent down and placed the pumpkin bread, wrapped in foil, tied with ribbon, on the welcome mat. Beside it, I slid a black envelope from my coat pocket. I had spent more time writing the contents of that envelope than I had packing the diaper bag this morning. I didn't knock. I didn't wait. As I walked back to my car, I passed the rose bush my mother used to prune every Saturday morning. It was still trimmed perfectly, still angry with thorns. A noise flickered behind the curtains. Laughter, the warmth of silverware clinking. A familiar voice, my father's maybe, called someone kiddo. But it wasn't for me. I drove away, with no music. Just Harper breathing softly in the back seat and my jaw clenched so tight it ached. The first betrayal came not from the sign, but from the fact that I wasn't surprised. 3 years ago, I walked out of this house for the last time with a suitcase, in one hand and bruises that weren't visible in the other. Not physical. Thomas never hit me. He didn't need to. His violence was quieter, strategic, the kind that made you second-guess your sanity, your timeline, your right to speak. You're remembering that wrong. You always overreact. Do you want to ruin Thanksgiving again? He didn't scream. He corrected. He didn't lie. He reframed. And by the time I realized I was living with a man who turned reality into his script, I had lost the ability to recognize my own story. My parents didn't believe me when I left him. My mother's first response was a text. "He's not perfect, but marriage takes work." My father never replied. Mia sent a thumbs-up emoji. I suppose that was her way of saying, "I'm here," or "Don't make me pick." But they did pick. Eventually, they picked Thomas. I found out 2 weeks after the divorce finalized that he was still golfing with my father, still texting jokes to my mother, still invited to birthdays. At first I thought they were just trying to stay neutral, keep the peace. But then I got the Christmas card. It was a photo. My family. Thomas in the center, holding Mia's new baby. My mother standing beside him. And Harper and I, erased. That was the second betrayal. The first was staying silent when I begged for them to listen. The second was smiling for the camera as if I never existed. I parked in the underground lot of my apartment, carried Harper upstairs, and laid her gently into the bassinet. She reached out sleepily for her stuffed elephant. I placed it next to her hand and kissed her forehead. I didn't cry. Instead, I opened my laptop and began to write. A list. Not a letter. Not a journal. A list of facts. Clean, controlled, logical. Thomas still has keys to my parents' house. The envelope contains legal disclaimers and property transfer documents. If they open it, they'll learn they now own the lake house, but they'll also learn that I've removed myself from the family trust, and that the transfer activates a clause in the mortgage. The clause that demands full payment within 30 days if ownership changes. They wouldn't know that part. Not unless they read the fine print. Not unless they bothered to care. I stared at the document on my screen, then at the silence of the apartment, the way the fridge hummed like a quiet apology. I didn't do this to hurt them, but I also didn't do it to be kind. The truth is, the lake house was supposed to be mine. My name was on it alongside my father's for tax reasons. He added me when I turned 29, called it preparing for the future. But when I left Thomas, I offered to sign it back. My father said, no need. Last month, I saw a foreclosure notice on the kitchen counter during a rare visit to drop off Harper's lost blanket. They didn't know I saw it. I never asked. But I remembered the date, the amount, the clause. Today, I triggered it, because when a family puts up a sign to lock you out, it is no longer a home. That night, Mia texted. Mia, 4:03 p.m. Did you come? I stared at the message. No, sorry. No, I didn't know. Just curiosity. I didn't reply. The next morning, Mia showed up at my door. I saw her through the peephole. She was holding the envelope. I read it, she said when I opened the door. Her voice was tight, not angry, just restrained. So you know, I said. I didn't know they put up that sign. You didn't stop it either. I didn't know about the clause. They didn't either. She looked down at Harper, who was crawling in slow, wobbly circles across the carpet. They think you did this to punish them. I didn't. But you don't regret it. No, I said. I don't. She looked at me for a long moment. Thomas was there. I know. He brought Caroline. I expected that. He toasted Dad, cut the turkey, sat in your chair. That one stung more than I let on. I kept my face calm. You're not going to fix this, are you? Mia asked. No, I said. I'm not. She nodded once. Okay. And then, she did something unexpected. She reached into her coat pocket and handed me the black envelope. It wasn't opened yet, she said. I was lying. I wanted to see if you'd admit what was inside. I took it back, opened the flap, and held up a second envelope inside, this one addressed to Mia. She froze. I placed it in her hand and closed the door without another word. Inside, that envelope were the texts she had sent Thomas during my separation. The ones she thought I never saw. The ones that said, she's being dramatic, and maybe she needs help. The ones he later used in court to try to prove I was unstable. I never brought them up. Until now. Harper laughed in the background. A small, bright, honest sound, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt like I was holding the pen again. Not in Thomas's script, not in theirs. Mine, and this time, no one gets to erase me. You're probably watching this on your TV right now, just letting it roll while you relax. But if my story has you feeling something, don't just sit there. Pick up your phone, search LP, Family Drama on YouTube, and hit subscribe. Because sometimes the quietest way to say I understand is simply wanting to hear more stories. Like mine. Stories that don't always get told but always deserve to be heard. They served him the first slice of pie. I wasn't there, of course. I was nursing Harper in the dark, the only light coming from the hallway lamp I forgot to turn off. But I knew it happened, because Mia told me later, haltingly, like the words tasted bitter even in her own mouth. Thomas O'Connor, my ex-husband, had been the first to sit at the table. My father had offered him the carving knife. My mother poured him wine. He toasted them, and they toasted back. Thomas always did know how to be adored. That was his true skill, not medicine, not empathy, not partnership, but performance. He had rehearsed it for years, charming, attentive, just self-deprecating enough to feel humble without losing an inch of power. He was the kind of man who brought fancy wine and remembered everyone's birthdays, the kind who could deliver a eulogy with tears perfectly timed. You'd believe every word, even when the corpse was someone he buried. It was Mia who told me, voice low, ashamed. She wasn't supposed to. But I think something in her cracked when she saw Caroline, the fiancée, seated in my place. With her hand resting lightly on the tablecloth I embroidered the year before our wedding. I never imagined it would return as the stage for my own erasure. Why did they invite him? I asked. My voice was flat, almost curious. Almost. Mia hesitated too long. He's still close with Dad, she finally said. He's not family. They say you left. He stayed. He stayed. That was always the line. As though survival demanded presence. As though silence and control and slow spiritual erosion didn't count as betrayal, as long as the man kept coming home. They kept. His name in the Christmas card, I said. Mia nodded, eyes down. You all knew, I said quietly. That's why you never asked why I left. You just needed him to keep looking like the good one. Silence. He brought Caroline, I continued. He didn't even try to hide it. She's a nurse, Mia said. He met her at the hospital. That part I knew. What I didn't know, what hit with a quiet surgical precision, was what Mia said next. She's pregnant. There it was. The knife. Dipped in sugar, handed gently across the table but meant to cut. I waited for the sting. It didn't come the way I expected. It came sharper, cleaner, not pain, certainty. You knew that too? I asked. No, not until last night. She was lying. She didn't lie well, but that was fine. That was familiar. There was a deeper current beneath her guilt. I couldn't see it yet. But it was there. You know what's strange? I said. I don't care that he moved on. I don't care that he's having another child. I care that you all welcomed him into the house I was raised in, while your niece sat in a car seat outside. Mia winced. They laughed when he joked about the turkey being dry, she said suddenly. The same way he used to when he said you couldn't cook, and no one said anything. Mom passed him the gravy. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. She wasn't here to apologize. She was here because something scared her. And I had a guess. What it was. I saw the envelope, she added, and her voice faltered. I opened it. Now we were getting somewhere. The envelope I left on the porch, black, unbranded, the kind you use for funerals or secrets, wasn't just paperwork. It was leverage. Inside was the deed to the family lake house, signed and notarized, with my half of the ownership transferred to my parents. Legally binding. Irrevocable. And the second page? A notice of collateral. My father had taken out a second mortgage on the lake house 2 years ago. Quietly. It had a clause. Any change in ownership required immediate notification and payment of the balance within 30 days. He never thought I'd invoke it. He never thought I knew, but I did. I found out when I accessed our joint tax files during the divorce. I wasn't supposed to still have access, but I did, because Thomas was too arrogant to change the password, and he used the same one for everything. I wasn't looking for the lake house at the time. I was looking for his offshore account, but the mortgage appeared instead. And I filed it away, until now. It's going to hit the bank by Monday, Mia whispered. I know. They're going to lose it. I know. You didn't warn them. They didn't warn me. She looked stricken. I watched her, calculating. Not coldly, not cruelly, strategically. Why are you really here, Mia? I don't know. Yes, you do. She bit her lip, then looked away. You're scared they'll blame you, I said. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. There was another silence, thicker, sharper. Then I said what I came to say. You're still forwarding my emails to Thomas, aren't you? Her head snapped up. What? You still have access to the family inbox, the one Dad made. You've seen the custody updates. You've passed them along. No. Evelyn, no. Then, how did he know I was planning to travel with Harper next month? That was in an email to Mom. Only her, she stammered. Maybe she told him. She didn't. You did. That was the second knife. I watched her flinch like she'd been slapped. I didn't mean, I know, I said. Which was worse. You don't understand. He's charming, but when he's mad, he's cruel, I finished. She nodded. And now you're afraid he'll turn on you. She didn't nod this time. She didn't have to. I rose from the sofa, walked to Harper's room. She was asleep, one fist curled under her cheek. I stood in the doorway and said, without looking back, You should go. Mia stood. Evelyn. I'm not mad. That surprised her. I'm not even shocked, but I'm done offering explanations. She hesitated. Can I come back? I mean, not today, but soon. I think, I said slowly, you should decide whose side you're on, and then act like it. She left quietly. I stood in the doorway of my daughter's room for a long time, and in that stillness, a memory returned. It was Thanksgiving 4 years ago. Thomas had forgotten the cranberry sauce, and I offered to run to the store. It was late. Snow was falling. I came back 30 minutes later, and the door was locked. Not because they were scared, because they forgot I was gone. I knocked, and they laughed from the dining room. They opened it eventually, but no one said sorry. I never said anything. Until now. I sat down at the kitchen table and pulled out my phone. Drafted a message. To Caroline. We've never spoken, but I think we should. I know who you're marrying, and I think he's keeping secrets from both of us. Let me know if you want to talk. EM. Then I pressed send. Let the next move come to me. They never called, not after the envelope, not after Thanksgiving, not after Mia's silence shattered and revealed the truth I already knew. But 3 days later, I got a notification from the county recorder's office. Title transfer complete. My share of the lake house now belonged entirely to my parents, just like they always wanted. Except this time, it came with consequences. I watched the snow fall from my apartment window, the city below wrapped in white like an apology it would never give. Harper slept beside me on the couch, curled in a crescent, her breath warm against my arm. She hadn't cried once since the night I brought her home from the failed dinner. I envied that innocence, how soft skin doesn't know it's been cut until the air stings. My parents thought I had surrendered, that the envelope was an act of submission, a peace offering, or worse, an apology. They didn't know it was a detonation. They never read fine print. The lake house had been in our family for over 2 decades. My father loved telling people he bought it outright. It was never true. He refinanced it twice that I know of, once to pay for Mia's grad school, once more quietly. That second time, he used my name on the title as collateral, making the paperwork cleaner for tax purposes. A gesture, he said. A gift. But like everything in that house, the gift came with strings. Strings he thought I'd never cut until I did. The second mortgage had a clause buried deep in the lender's terms. Any change in ownership triggers full repayment within 30 days. They wouldn't have known. Most people wouldn't. But I did. Because I read contracts like battle plans. Now, I wasn't trying to destroy them. I just wanted them to feel what it was like to lose something they assumed was theirs by default. I wanted them to read a letter and feel the floor shift, the way I did when I read that sign. The message wasn't vengeance. It was clarity. Harper stirred, and I placed a hand gently on her back. Then I opened my laptop, typed in the legal access, portal and checked the lien again. Active. Balance due. $384,000. No payments made. They were waiting for me to undo it. To call the bank, to pretend it was a mistake. I wouldn't, and I hadn't told Mia everything. Only what I needed her to know to carry the weight of it when they finally turned on her. Because they would. That was how they kept their hands clean, by passing the blame. The phone rang just past noon. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Some instincts are sharper than habits. Is this Evelyn Moore? A woman's voice asked. Yes. This is Trina Walters from Beacon Equity Mortgage. I'm calling in regard to the property at Sycamore Lake. I closed my eyes briefly. Go ahead. We've been unable to reach the co-owners regarding a triggered clause. You're listed as the former co-signer. We'd like to confirm the transfer was voluntary. It was. Are you aware that the transfer triggers a repayment clause? Yes. A pause. Then may I ask why you... I'm no longer involved in the property. You'll need to contact the current owners. Another pause. Longer. I see. Thank you. She hung up. I stared at my reflection in the black screen of the laptop. My face looked still, maybe even calm. But beneath it, I felt the pull of years. Each compromise, each silence, each time I bit my tongue while they called Thomas a good man. While they told me to try harder. While they told me I was the problem because I stopped smiling, and then the real blow landed. Not from my family, not from the mortgage, but from a voicemail I didn't notice until that evening. It was from Thomas. Hadn't blocked his number. Some part of me wanted to know the moment he misstepped. His voice was cheerful, casual. I played it twice to catch every word. Hey, Evelyn. Just wanted to say thanks. Dinner was lovely. You were missed, of course. Caroline loved meeting the family, and your mom makes a killer stuffing. Anyway, hope Harper's doing well. I saw the picture Mia posted. Cute kid. Looks a bit like me, doesn't she? The laugh at the end wasn't long. Just sharp enough to leave a scar. I replayed that one line again. Looks a bit like me, doesn't she? It was bait. A spark tossed near dry grass. I didn't bite. Instead, I opened the locked file on my hard drive, the one labeled O'Connor Archive. In it were PDFs, emails, screenshots, one particularly damning voice recording. I'd collected them slowly, quietly. I wasn't planning to use them, not then. I just didn't want to be blindsided again. But one of them stood out now. A spreadsheet, shared. From Mia's old work email to Thomas's private address. It was titled, Custody Risk Log, Evelyn Moore. I stared at it for a long time, like a painting that only reveals its truth if you blur your eyes. There were 4 entries: postpartum anxiety, unverified, freelance income, unstable, minimal support network family estrangement. Maya had sent it 3 weeks after the divorce. I hadn't seen it until a month ago. Buried in an old Dropbox folder Thomas accidentally shared during the asset division. I had saved it, knowing one day it would matter. Now I knew when. That's why they kept him close. That's why he toasted with my father. He wasn't just part of the family. He was the contingency plan. The more I disappeared, the easier it would be for them to rewrite the story. That Evelyn was unstable. That Thomas was stable. That Harper would be better off with a man and a family who could provide what I couldn't. That Thanksgiving was never just a dinner. It was a vote, and they had already cast theirs. I stood in the doorway of Harper's room that night, watching her sleep. The stuffed elephant was tucked beneath her arm. Her breaths came in quiet rhythm. I made a decision, not loud, not dramatic, just clean. I picked up my phone and dialed a new number, a contact I hadn't used in a while. "Alana, it's Evelyn. I need to retain you again." She didn't ask. "Why?" She just said, "What are we taking back this time?" I looked at Harper. Everything. I wasn't the one who started the fire. I only handed them the match. By the time the family group chat exploded, I had already deleted my name from every legal, emotional, and ancestral thread that tied me to them. The envelope had done its work, quietly, elegantly, irrevocably. But what happened next, I didn't orchestrate. They tore each other apart all on their own. Mia told me what she could, what she dared to. She had seen it unfolding from inside, her phone lighting up with message after message while she sat at the kitchen table, pretending to drink her morning coffee. But the real boiling point didn't come from my absence. It came from who noticed it. The first message was from my cousin Jeremy, who lived in Seattle and rarely spoke unless it was to send blurry baby photos no one asked for. He had apparently texted a simple, clueless question. "Did Evelyn come last night? Was hoping to see Harper." No one responded for several minutes. Then came my mother's reply, sterile and sharp. She chose not to attend. "Let's not bring drama into this thread." What happened next was a fracture disguised as a ripple. My Aunt Linda, the one they never wanted to invite to weddings but always needed when someone got sick, sent a single message. She didn't. "Choose not to attend. You taped a sign to the door that said no single mothers. That's not absence. That's exile." Silence followed. I imagined my mother's face tightening, the way it used to when someone asked an uncomfortable question in public, as if truth itself was the impolite one. Then came the denial. My father wrote, "There was no such sign. We have no idea what she's talking about." The problem with lying is that it works until someone has proof. Mia, without warning, dropped the photo. A picture she'd taken on Thanksgiving morning, before I arrived. A lazy shot of the front door, sent to her husband with the caption, "Mom went full dictator again." The sign was clear, bold, taped right next to the wreath. The silence in the group chat shattered like porcelain dropped from a second floor. What followed wasn't chaos. It was a reckoning. "Jeremy, you knew she was coming, and you still let that sign stay up?" Cousin Beth, "Wait, Thomas was there, and Evelyn wasn't? Are you serious?" Linda, "She brought a baby, your granddaughter, and you locked the door." Each message was a blow. Not to me. To them. Then the pivot came, swift and ugly. My mother turned on Mia. "You took that picture and said nothing. You let your sister walk away." That was the line. That was the move I didn't anticipate, but should have. The sign might have humiliated me, but Mia's silence was what damned her. She thought staying out of the crossfire would save her. She forgot that people who watch the burning and say nothing are always next to burn. My father added fuel. Maybe if Evelyn had stayed married, we wouldn't be in this position. That house wouldn't be at risk, Jeremy asked. What house? And that was the mistake. Mia tried to stop it. She sent a message. "This isn't for the group chat. Let's take this offline." But Linda had already opened her inbox, because I had sent her a copy of the mortgage clause 3 days earlier. Quietly. Just in case. Now she forwarded it to the entire thread. One PDF, one paragraph, highlighted in yellow. "Transfer of co-ownership shall trigger repayment of remaining loan within 30 days. A string of typing bubbles appeared, then vanished. "Beth, you're saying you let her give you the house. And now you're about to lose it because you didn't read the fine print? No one replied. Then the next blow came, and this time it wasn't from me. It was from Linda. She sent a message not with words but with a photo. Me, at age 9. Standing beside her in front of the lake house holding a birthday cake with my name on it. My mother had refused to come that year, said the drive was too far. I'd cried the whole ride home. Linda's caption was simple. You've been erasing her since she was a child. This isn't new, it's just public now. The group chat fell silent. Mia texted me privately a few hours later. They're blaming me now, saying I created a wedge, that I betrayed the family by siding with you. I didn't ask for sympathy. Asked a question. Did you delete the spreadsheet? She didn't respond for a full 5 minutes. Then, no. I didn't reply, because the silence she received in return was the most honest thing I could give her. She wasn't ready to delete it. Not because she wanted to keep hurting me, but because it still served her. A tool, just in case. Mia was no longer just a spectator. She was learning the rules of survival. She had just learned that no one stays clean in a house built on other people's silence. Later that night, my phone buzzed again. It was a number I didn't have saved. The message was short. Evelyn, it's Caroline. I saw the message. I think we need to talk. I stared at it for a long time before replying. Come alone. I wasn't sure yet if she was an ally or just the next pawn trying to escape her square. But one thing was clear. Thomas had underestimated me. Again. The night Harper first laughed in her sleep, I knew I couldn't afford to feel sorry for myself again. It was a small sound, barely a breath of air, but pure, uncontaminated. Her joy was untouched. By the war I was silently waging, and in that moment, I realized something that has never left me since. Children don't inherit pain. They inherit silence, unless we decide to break it. I sat cross-legged on the rug, back pressed against the cold wall, staring at her crib. A war was beginning, quiet, methodical, legal, and no one was coming to protect us. So I did what women like me always do. I started documenting. The laptop glowed against my skin. I created a folder and named it not with rage, but precision. Continuity of care. I filled it with receipts, photos, messages. I took screenshots of every missed call from Thomas, every just checking in text that came masked in civility but steeped in ownership. I scanned Harper's pediatrician visits, therapy referrals, daycare notes. Then I wrote a letter. Not for a judge, not even for Thomas. For Harper. She would never read it until she was old enough to understand that love without safety isn't love, it's leverage. In the letter, I told her the truth. Not the headline version, not the family gossip version. Just the facts. That she was wanted. That her father was clever but cruel. That I walked away before she could learn how to mimic my silence. And then I added one last line. I didn't run. I recalculated. The next morning, I got a delivery. A small package, hand-addressed. No return label. Inside, a single item. Stuffed rabbit, soft, new. With a blue ribbon around its neck and a tiny tag that read, From Daddy. I held it in my hands for exactly 13 seconds before I dropped it into the trash. Not because it wasn't beautiful, but because it came. Through a back door. No call. No note. No signature. Just a gesture, disguised as sweetness. A reminder that he still knew where I lived. That no matter what I did, he could still enter the room without opening the door. But there was something else in the package. A second tag. Folded between the fabric seams. I almost missed it. Written in someone else's handwriting. She should know both sides. It's only fair. I recognized it. Caroline. So she'd crossed the threshold. I wasn't surprised. She was smart, too. Smart to stay asleep forever. But the question wasn't whether she'd figured Thomas out. It was whether she'd joined him or left him. I didn't call her. I waited. That same afternoon, I took Harper for a walk. Boston in late November smelled like frost and old regret. I wrapped her in the thick gray blanket my mother once knitted for Mia's first child. They never offered it to me. I took it anyway. At the corner cafe, I saw a figure already waiting. Brown coat, hands fidgeting over a coffee cup, hair pulled tight as if trying to stay composed. Caroline. I didn't greet her. I just sat down. She didn't look at Harper. "Thank you for coming," she said. I didn't say I would. She nodded, accepting the terms. "I didn't know," she began. "Not at first. They never do." Her jaw tightened. "I found documents, emails, the log you mentioned. I thought maybe he just needed help organizing." "You thought abuse could be archived into efficiency." She flinched. I let the silence stretch. "He told me you were unstable, that you refused therapy, that you used Harper to hurt him. And you believed him." "I did," she admitted, "until he said he had a lawyer looking into retroactive custody. That made me look up." "He used those words?" I asked. "Exactly those. Said he was building a case, that Harper needed a stable household, 2 parents. Legal precedent was on his side." I almost laughed. Instead, I pulled out my phone and opened a document, the custody agreement, filed, signed, and airtight. I slid it across the table. "I have sole legal custody," I said. "He knows that. He signed it." Caroline didn't blink, but he's planning to contest it, quietly, behind your back. "Of course he was. He has 3 affidavits," she continued. "One from your parents, one from Mia." I raised an eyebrow. "That's not possible. They're undated. Drafts, probably, but real. He said he'd use them if needed." I leaned back, so that was it. The rabbit hadn't been a peace offering. It was the first domino, the soft entry before the hard play. "You want to help me," I said flatly. "Yes." "Why?" "Because he's doing to me what he did to you. Just cleaner." I considered this, then asked the only question that mattered. "Are you pregnant?" Her face changed. Not panic, not surprise, acceptance. "Yes," she said, "but I don't know if I'm keeping it." That was the shift. That was when I knew she wasn't here out of guilt or fear. She was here to choose, for herself. I gave her the name of my lawyer. "Tell her everything," I said, "including how long you stayed silent." Caroline nodded, then glanced at Harper. "She looks nothing like him," she said quietly. "No," I agreed. "She doesn't." And that was the first time I knew I'd win. Not because I had more money, or more allies, but because I had facts, I had time, and I had stopped waiting for permission to fight. Back at home, I opened my old photo album. Page after page of family pictures, cropped smiles, filtered vacations, awards held up like shields. I pulled one out, me, graduation day, my father's arm around me, my mother's hand on my shoulder. On the back, in my mother's cursive, it said, "Our daughter, strong and destined." I tore it in half, not out of hate, out of accuracy. They were wrong on both counts. I wasn't strong by destiny. I was strong by decision. The call came just after midnight. I was awake, of course. Insomnia doesn't respect clocks. I was pacing the apartment with Harper pressed against my shoulder, humming a melody I barely remembered from childhood. Something about a silver moon and steady waves. She had a slight fever from her new vaccine, nothing serious, but enough to make her cling. The screen lit up with a number I hadn't saved, but I knew who it was before I touched it. Caroline. I let it ring. Once. Twice. On the third, I answered. You said you wanted to talk, I said. There was a pause. On the other end, a breath. Then her voice, tight, not from nerves but restraint. I found something you need to see. She didn't ask if I was available, or if it was a good time. She knew those questions would be meaningless. We were both past pretending the clock mattered anymore. I didn't respond. I emailed it, she continued. Check the file called Winter Folder. Password is the name of your street, all lowercase. Then she hung up. No goodbye. I laid Harper down, kissed her cheek, and went straight to my laptop. The folder opened instantly. No delay, no encryption beyond the name of my street, just enough to make it feel like a personal handoff. Inside were 6 files, PDFs, screenshots, 1 short audio clip. The first document was from a therapist, or more accurately, a therapist's template, a psychological evaluation form half-filled with my name typed at the top. I'd never met this person, but according to the form, I was exhibiting signs of narcissistic personality disorder, unresolved postpartum psychosis, and a pattern of emotionally manipulative behavior likely to impede co-parenting. Signed, Dr. Marshall Flint, dated 3 weeks ago, except it was a forgery. How did I know? Because Dr. Flint had died 6 months earlier. His obituary was public. I scrolled through the other files. An email thread between Thomas and an anonymous custody consultant, asking for help in constructing a compelling emotional profile to reopen custody arrangements. A receipt from a background check service ordered under my maiden name, with a list of court search results dating back 20 years, including a juvenile shoplifting charge that didn't belong to me. And then, the audio file. I hesitated before pressing play. Then I listened. Thomas's voice, smooth and familiar. Speaking to someone, Caroline, I assumed. I just need a clean record of her being unstable. That's it. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to make her hesitate. If she thinks the court might question her, she'll back down. Evelyn always folds when she thinks she's being watched. He paused, then added, and if she doesn't, well, you saw what happened to Mia. I stopped the recording. It took me 4 full minutes to move. Not because I was shocked, but because he was right about one thing. I had folded before. I had hesitated when they questioned me. I had softened when they looked disappointed. I had backed down when their discomfort outweighed my truth. But not this time. This time, I'd been preparing long before he knew the game had changed. I emailed the file to 3 people. My lawyer, my cloud archive, and a trusted friend from college who worked in digital forensics. Then I turned on my phone's voice recorder and began narrating everything I'd read. Slowly, methodically, legally. So no one could ever say I doctored the files. No one could say I didn't document the chain of evidence. At 2:37 a.m., I wrote Caroline back. You did the right thing, but this isn't over. If you're serious about exposing him, I'll need your full statement. Sworn. I'm not doing this halfway. Her reply came 6 minutes later. I'm in. Then another message followed. Unexpected. Just 3 words. Check your mailbox. I slipped on a coat and crept down the hall, the building silent in a way only city buildings can be, alive with a hush that's louder than noise. Inside the box was a manila envelope. No name, no return address. I opened it under the hallway light. Inside, 3 printed photos. The first was Thomas, standing beside my father in a parking garage. Handshake. Envelope passed. The second, dated the next day, was of my mother, sitting. With Thomas at a cafe I recognized, 2 blocks from the courthouse. The third was of Mia, alone, at a notary office, holding a pen above a stack of papers. In the corner, the timestamp. 5 days ago, I looked closer at the papers in the image. The seal was faint, but I knew the format. It was a motion to reconsider custody. And Mia had signed it as a supporting party. I stared at that photo longer than I should have. I'd given her the benefit of doubt. Again. I'd allowed her silence to read as conflict, her hesitation as fear, but it had been neither. It had been a mask. I walked back into the apartment, numb from more than the cold. Harper was still sleeping, her face soft, mouth slightly open. I tucked her in again, then walked to the kitchen. I opened the drawer and pulled out the flash drive I'd been building quietly for months. Everything was already there. Tax returns, therapy receipts, proof of primary residence, daycare tuition, and now, Caroline's files. But now, I added something else. The photos. And I renamed the folder. Custody is not a negotiation. I closed the drive, sealed it in an envelope, and placed it in Harper's diaper bag. Let them come. Let them file motions, and forge letters and whisper about my instability. Let them circle like vultures, because they had made one mistake. They thought I was still trying to be part of their family. They hadn't realized I was preparing to bury it. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not physically. The heat buzzed, softly from overhead vents, but emotionally. Cold in the way a winter morning feels before the sun touches anything. Cold in the way people look at a woman who's already been judged long before the hearing starts. I sat on the left side. Harper, not with me. She was with Linda, 2 blocks away, safely out of range. Caroline was already inside. She didn't sit beside me. Smart choice. We both knew appearances mattered, and today wasn't about alliance. It was about control. Thomas entered with his lawyer, a man in a wool suit 2 sizes too smug. They didn't look at me. They didn't need to. They thought today was a formality. A procedural tactic, just another nudge in their slow campaign to wear me down. The judge's name was Eleanor Richter. Middle-aged, composed, face carved from granite and experience. I'd done my research. She didn't tolerate emotional games, which suited me fine. I didn't come to cry. We began. Thomas's lawyer led first, motioning to reopen custody based on new concerns regarding Evelyn Moore's mental and emotional stability. He cited vague documents, including the fake therapist's report and the pending affidavits from family members. I said nothing. The judge turned to me. Ms. Moore, do you have a response? I stood, calm, clean. Yes, Your Honor, I do, handed the bailiff a folder. Everything. Caroline's signed affidavit, digital forensics verifying forged reports, photos of Thomas with my parents, the email thread requesting emotional manipulation tactics. The judge leafed through the pages. Her brow creased, but she said nothing for several long seconds. Are you alleging fraud, Ms. Moore? She asked. No, I replied coolly. I'm proving it. That's when Thomas broke his silence. This is a personal attack. She's bitter, vindictive. She's weaponizing my relationships with her family. I turned to him. Not angry, not flinching. They're not my family anymore. Caroline rose then. The judge allowed it. She spoke calmly, but her voice carried weight. I'm Thomas O'Connor's fiancé. I was unaware of the extent of his actions until recently. I voluntarily provided sworn testimony and documents. I have no child with him, no legal stake in this. I'm here because I refuse to participate in a lie. That shook the room. Thomas didn't move. His lawyer whispered something, but his hands had gone rigid on the table. Richter folded her hands. I'll review everything thoroughly, she said. But at this time, the motion to reconsider custody is denied. A sharp inhale behind me. It was Mia. She had entered late. I hadn't noticed her slip in. She stood near the back, frozen, but I didn't acknowledge her, because this wasn't the moment for reconciliation. This was the moment of clarity. Outside, Caroline stopped me. "He's going to retaliate," she said. "Of course he is. You need to prepare." I already did. I showed her a second flash drive, sealed, time-stamped, delivered to my lawyer's office the night before. It contained a video recording of Harper's full daily care routine, with date-stamped footage of me handling every feeding, medication, and bedtime. Let him try to claim I was unstable. I was surveillance-level prepared. But something else happened. That night, I got a call. Not from Thomas, not from Caroline, from my mother. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was soft, almost childlike. "Evelyn, we didn't know about the forged papers. Thomas told us. He said you were spiraling. We thought—" She hesitated. "We were wrong. If you're willing, I'd like to meet. Alone." I stared at the message, then deleted it. Because they hadn't been wrong, they'd just been complicit. And now that the house was burning, they wanted to pretend they hadn't helped build it. No, not this time. That night, as Harper fell asleep against my chest, I whispered to her the truth. I didn't win today because I fought harder. I won because I finally stopped playing by their rules. Then I kissed her forehead, and I wrote one more sentence in my private file. The war isn't over. But today, I changed the battlefield. I didn't sleep the night after the hearing, not because of fear, because of the silence. That strange final silence that comes when you've pulled the trigger. Not of a gun, but of truth. It reverberates. Differently. Quiet. Dense. Like the calm before a second collapse. At 6 a.m., Mia showed up at my door. She looked like she hadn't slept either. "I need to talk," she said. No preamble, no apologies, just urgency. I let her in. She held something in her hand, a flash drive. "It's not just about Thomas," she said. It never was. I didn't respond. I watched. She plugged the drive into my laptop, pulled up a folder named Dad Offshore, then another, Mom Trust Amendments 2022, then another, Letters Aunt Linda never received. "You were right," she whispered. And suddenly, the years rearranged themselves. The stories I was told, the stories I believed, the reasons Linda was shut out, the money I was supposed to inherit, the urgency my parents had to replace me, with Thomas, with Mia, with the image of a perfect family that never really existed. "They used your divorce as a smokescreen," she continued. "They let Thomas in because he gave them cover. He was your punishment, but also their distraction." I stared at the screen. The documents were clean, time-stamped, and legally damning. My parents had embezzled from Linda's trust fund after she was declared unfit. And the trustee listed in the revised documents? Thomas, appointed through a family vote. I leaned back, almost numb. "So they never hated me for being a single mother," I said. "They hated me because I wouldn't shut up. I saw too much. I remembered too much." Mia nodded. Her eyes were glass. "They framed it as your downfall to hide theirs." My heart didn't race. It slowed, sharpened. "They're scared now," she added. "No," I said. "They're cornered. There's a difference." That night, I drafted a letter. Not to the family, to the State Bar Association, to the IRS, to the trustee board handling Aunt Linda's case. I attached everything. Didn't sign it, Evelyn Moore. I signed it, Linda J. Moore, as represented by legal guardian E. Moore. Let the system call it what they want. I called it setting the record straight. 2 days later, I received a text from Caroline. Just 3 words. "He knows everything." I knew who he was. Thomas. And I knew what that meant. The next blow wouldn't come in court. It would come in public. And I was right. The video hit the internet by morning. It was grainy, but intentional. Me, 6 years ago, arguing with a nurse at a fertility clinic. My voice sharp, my expression cold. The footage was framed to suggest mental instability, even cruelty. Comments exploded. Is this the woman fighting for full custody? That poor baby. She needs help. Caroline called immediately. He timed it perfectly, she said. He had this all along. So did I replied. Because what the video didn't show, but what I had proof of, was that the nurse in the video had been disciplined 2 weeks later for altering medication protocols. I wasn't unstable. I was the only patient who noticed the error and reported it. I sent the documentation to 3 parenting blogs, then to a local reporter who owed me a favor, then to the clinic's legal team. By noon, the narrative flipped. Woman. Wrongly smeared after saving lives in fertility scandal, Thomas tried to make me a monster. Instead, he reminded the world I don't back down. That night, I received a letter by courier. Handwritten. From my father. Evelyn. We don't know how to undo what we've done. Maybe we never can. But the legacy, you're building for Harper. It's something none of us deserve to witness, let alone try to destroy. Do what you have to. You already have. Dad, I didn't cry. I didn't reply. Because this wasn't about regret. It was about reckoning. Aunt Linda called me the next morning. They're selling the house, she said. They're dissolving the trust. The silence has cracked open. And, for the first time, her voice didn't sound like an outcast. It sounded like power. I took Harper outside that evening. Snow had just begun to fall, the first clean snow of the season. She reached out one tiny hand, tried to catch it, and I whispered, to her, we don't run anymore. We remember, we record, we rise. Then I turned back inside and began preparing for the final move. The final court date fell on a rainy Wednesday. Not symbolic rain, just inconvenient, cold, and wet. Harper was asleep when I left the cabin. Mia offered to watch her. I kissed my daughter on the forehead and told her nothing because at 10 months old, she understood everything in my silence. When I entered the courtroom, Thomas was already there. His expression was rehearsed, his suit tailored, his presence choreographed. Caroline sat behind him, her arms crossed. She didn't smile at me, but she gave a single nod. That was enough. The judge asked for opening statements. My lawyer stood, spoke with measured precision about manipulation, deception, the erosion of parental trust. Then came the evidence. Thomas's name on Aunt Linda's amended trust documents, his secret transfer of funds into offshore accounts, the custody motion timed deliberately before Evelyn's Thanksgiving visit home. He sat there, motionless, until Caroline rose from her seat. I have something to say, Your Honor, Thomas's lawyer protested. The judge allowed it. She walked to the front, heels clicking with the assurance of someone who'd burned every bridge behind her. I found this. In our safe, she said, holding up a voice recorder. I didn't know it was on until I played it. The judge nodded. She pressed play. Thomas's voice filled the courtroom. She'll fall apart. She always does. We'll make her look unstable, unfit. I don't even need full custody. I just want leverage. Harper is the last thing tying her to any kind of value. No one breathed. Then my voice followed on the tape. It was quiet, shaking. You're not doing this. Not to her. The audio ended. The silence after was more painful than any scream. Thomas's lawyer requested a recess. Denied. The verdict came fast. Sole legal and physical custody awarded to me. All visitation suspended pending further investigation, the amended trust invalidated. The funds frozen, and a separate case to be opened regarding financial misconduct. But none of that broke Thomas. What broke him was when the judge looked at me and said, "Ms. Moore, thank you for your patience and your clarity. Your daughter is lucky to have you." He looked at me then. Really looked. Not as a pawn, not as a possession, but as someone he no longer had power over. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I left that courtroom as silent as I had entered, but something in the air had changed. A week later, I stood again at the doorstep of my parents' house. No sign on the door this time, just a wreath, blue and silver. My father opened the door, wordless, thinner, older. "We're moving to Florida," he said flatly. "Good," I replied. He hesitated. Linda came by. I said nothing. She said, "We owe you both an apology." I looked past him, into the house I once called home. The furniture looked smaller, the walls duller. "You don't owe us anything anymore," he added. "I know," I said. "I never did." I turned and walked away. I never looked back. 6 months later, Harper took her first steps in the Vermont cabin. She giggled as she stumbled into my arms, snow falling softly outside the windows. Mia sat on the couch reading. Aunt Linda brewed tea in the kitchen. That night, I lit a fire, sat by it, watched the flames eat through the pages of old letters I no longer needed to carry, and I began to write this story to you. Because I want you to understand something. You are not crazy for walking away from what everyone else calls a perfect family. You are not weak for choosing peace over tradition. You are not cruel for refusing to accept silence as love. I used to think revenge was the destination. But now I know. The real revenge is living so well. They choke on your absence. So here's what I learned. When the people who should love you choose appearance over truth, your only duty is to yourself and to the future you're raising. Your voice may shake, but use it. Your heart may break, but rebuild it. Your fear may rise, but face it, because when you stand up, not just to them, but for yourself, everything begins to shift. You become the one thing they never saw coming: free. This was never just about Thanksgiving. It was about every lie served on silver platters and every truth buried under years of expectation. But now the table is mine, and I've chosen who sits at it. If this story reached something inside you, if it made you feel seen or understood, or even just less alone, then I invite you to stay, subscribe to this channel, share it, support these stories, because I promise you, this is only the beginning, and the best revenge is telling your own story before they tell it for you.